My name's David Phillips, and I'm interviewing Tony Earnshaw on the 16th of February 2017 on behalf of the Leo Archive. So, Tony, can we start off with a bit about yourself? I must say we're sitting in your kitchen, surrounded by boxes, because I know that you're going to be moving shortly to Wales. So I'm glad I've caught you in Uxbridge. But first of all, tell me, do you mind telling me, when were you born?
8/11/1935.
1935.
That makes me 81.
It does indeed. We look very fit for 81, may I say.
Don't feel it after moving all these boxes.
I can imagine. And I noticed a lot of computer equipment as I came in, stacked up. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But so, can you tell me a little bit about your youth, where you were born, or perhaps what your parents did?
Born Queen Charlotte's Hospital in London.
Right, okay. Were your parents living near there?
No, I'm not sure. I think they were living in Acton at the time.
Uh-huh.
Shortly afterwards, moved to Northolt.
Right. What did your father do?
Originally, he owned a little garage which became Spurling's and was main Bedford agents. But then he got called up and he was a soldier.
And he stayed a soldier?
Well, he got out as quick as he could.
And what, went back to his garage?
No, he decided to retire.
Ah, right. And what about you? You went to school locally there?
I went to school at Chester College, Harrow.
Right. Not your first school,
No, that was the second school. I went to Miss Parnell's primary school before that.
Very good. You can still remember that.
Oh, do I?
Yes.
I'm afraid I broke a window.
How?
A minor explosion.
Really? What were you doing? Chemistry?
Making hydrogen.
Were you?
I decided to make a few hydrogen balloons.
Yes.
They'd never heard of doing it, and so I'm afraid somebody had left a light on, in the flammable light, and the whole lot went pump.
How old were you then, do you think?
Sorry?
How old were you when that happened? About
9.
Yes, really. So you were an early scientist.
Well, I wouldn't call it that, but hydrogen's easy to make.
And how did you gradually move into engineering? Did you go to a college after school?
Well, I was interested in various things. The headmaster at my college was an atomic scientist and also a reverend, which is an unusual combination. And the principal of the school was another reverend and ran the local church. But the one who was the atomic scientist taught me a heck of a lot that is outside the books. I was not very good a pupil. In fact, I classed myself as a dunce.
But you still managed to produce hydrogen.
Oh, well, chemistry was all right.
Yes.
The other thing was algebra. I didn't get on with it in the way that I should, but I learnt a few things that have come in useful since.
Yes. So, did you go to a technical college or a university or anything like that after?
Only to give lectures.
Right.
To them.
So when school finished, what did you do? Where did you go?
First job was with a television company. I was repairing televisions.
They taught you how to repair?
No, I taught myself.
Right. Well, television, that's fairly early days for television.
There was only BBC on at the time.
Yes.
Then it developed a bit more.
Yes.
And so on.
What were you doing? What sort of repair were you doing?
Well, they were renting them and selling them, and they came in, I put them right.
Right. But these were big devices in those days, weren't they?
Well, no,
small screens, but big cabinets.
heavy cabinets. Yeah, you used to get an extra chap to give you a lift with them.
What was the name of the company? Can you remember?
Oh no, I worked for about 4 different companies.
Did you? All television?
All but one on that side, but then I got involved with Rachel, doing military stuff I can't tell you about.
No.
And well, my electronics knowledge is fairly comprehensive.
But how did you acquire this knowledge?
How does one acquire knowledge anyway?
Well, you didn't go to college to pick it up.
No, you can learn quicker without.
Right. So you're a sort of a natural electronics engineer.
Yeah.
You were
I'll put it
repairing
that.
televisions, etc. And then Raycol came along.
Well, Rachel was one of the firms. I also did a little bit for the Atomic Energy Authority. I can't tell you about that either.
What? Just give me an idea of what
Safety
sort of thing.
systems.
Safety systems. Okay. But electronic safety systems.
The electronics, yes.
All right.
So that people wouldn't blow themselves up.
Of course. Now, how did you get into computing?
Through being headhunted by a gentleman who came into our television shop.
Really? What, to get a television repaired, or because he was
I
looking
don't
for
know
it?
why he was in the shop. He saw me repairing them and asked me if I'd like a job in computers.
Just simple as that.
So I said yes.
But did you know what a computer was?
No. But I thought I'd find out.
And do you know who he was? Can you remember who he was?
Can't remember any names, I'm sorry, I wish I could.
What company was he representing?
He was with Leo.
Ah. What?
And the place I worked was at Hemel Hempstead.
Right.
That was the first place.
You moved to Hemel, did you? Or
No, I was living in Aylesbury and travelling daily.
Ah, right. Okay. So, was this part of the Leo company, or was this one of the machines that had been sold or rented to a...
It was being rented to a petrol company. I can't be sure. I think it might have been Shell, but I'm not certain.
Right.
It was on the... it was out on the bridge over the top of the main road at Hemel. This is still there now. It's quite a big sort of arch over the road.
Yes, yes. So, okay, you think it might have been Shell, and how old would you be then? Can you remember?
No idea, sorry.
In your 20s, probably?
It must have been sometime in the 50s,
Right.
so I can't be certain.
Right, okay. So this was early days.
Oh,
Computing.
early days, yeah.
So they must have had what sort of computer would you think they had? A Leo?
I'm not sure whether it was a Leo 2 or not. It could have been a 3, but I'm not certain. I can remember it had a round monitor on it.
Well, certainly Leo 1 had one.
And it also had telephone type key switches.
Right, right. Did you go to the Leo 1 at Cadby Hall?
I think I've been there a couple of times, but I'm not certain. I can't remember it.
Right.
I do know that I had to go somewhere for a short course, which was ended up as 2 days, which I didn't consider very good.
Really? A Leo course?
On the Leo.
On the Leo. So on the Leo 2, do you think?
I'm not certain.
Okay.
I'm sorry, my
That's all
memory's not that
Oh,
good.
right. So there you are in Hemel with a rented Leo, probably a Leo
They had
2.
a site engineer,
Yes.
and he chucked me panels and said they're faulty, you can mend them, and that was it.
So how did you go about it?
Well, you checked the components over and found out what was wrong with them.
Yes. You'd need spare parts. Would you get those from Leo, or did
They
you
had
keep them?
a quantity of spare bits and pieces
Right.
on site,
Right.
but anything that was needed, they ordered up,
Yes.
usually from radio spares.
Yeah.
Yes.
What sort of things?
Well, resistors, capacitors, etc. Now, they were using a few transistors, but this was mainly a valve-oriented machine.
Yes.
Can you cut this just for a second?
We'll return to Leo at Hemel
Yeah.
Hempstead. So the chief engineer there, the site engineer, is giving you repair jobs, etc. Are you beginning to learn about how the whole thing works?
Well, I knew how the panels work, but
Yes.
I had a rough idea, but not of the way the data flow was or anything at that time.
Right. Right.
This came a bit later when I started working for the other company.
Yes. So there, you and the other engineer, two engineers running this.
I don't know if he had another one as a standby because when he went on holiday or anything, but I
Yes.
never met another one.
Right. And was it running 24 hours a day, this machine?
Except when it broke down.
But I'm just thinking you need an engineer on site throughout, wouldn't you?
Oh, it was 24-hour cover on all the computers.
Yes. Yes.
If it wasn't one engineer, it would have been another always. But they had 24-hour cover on all sites.
Right. Okay. So, how were you treated by the other engineers? Because some of them would be highly qualified, been to top universities, etc. And you were essentially a TV repairman who was doing some fairly sophisticated
Now, I'm
work.
going to tell you something that might be interesting.
Yeah.
I have no qualifications on paper whatsoever,
Right.
but I'm respected by some of the top names going because of the knowledge I've acquired.
Yes.
And that is much nicer than having qualifications.
Yes.
The other thing is I have very high clearance level for military work and all the rest. I can get jobs which other people aren't allowed to do.
Right.
I've got 30449 ASRE and 30384 AID clearance, which are top government clearances.
I'm not familiar with those. Who issues that? The Ministry of Defence?
Yes.
Right, right.
So I'm actually allowed to work on almost anything you like to put in front of me, knowing that I won't divulge anything sensitive.
Yes, yes. Let's get back to Leo Hemel then. So how did your career develop there? Did you become a senior engineer or the
No.
main engineer?
I never got past the, shall we put it, the train monkey stage. They passed me over to another company which was an offshoot. This is where things progressed a bit because I received some decent training then.
Just get back to the site that you first worked on then. As Leo there'd be a lot of peripheral equipment, etc., the printers and the paper tape feeds, etc. Were you involved in these?
Oh yes. Maintaining these was a doddle because it was mainly mechanical problems.
Yes.
Usually they clogged them up.
Yes. Not electronic problems.
Well, occasional, but more finger trouble, like dropping a screwdriver in the works and things. Which I don't know why they seem to do that on line printers.
But did you have much contact with the operating staff and the programmers as well?
Yeah, they used to buy me sandwiches
Why?
because they liked me helping them. If the machine was running well, everyone was doing well.
Yes, yes. And your job's to keep it running well.
Yeah.
Well, it would run well until it stopped, basically, wouldn't it?
Well, my job was to keep it running.
Yes, yes. What was the biggest problem you had, do you think, keeping it running?
When the power went out for the whole Hemel Hempstead.
Did it go out?
Yeah.
Not frequently, occasionally.
No, they lost it completely for a day.
Did they?
I don't know what happened, but it went off, and obviously these machines don't run without power.
No. So the whole thing
No
shut
fault
down.
in the machine.
And when it fired up again, what happened?
No, we switched everything off and brought it up logically.
Right.
The way we could tell that the power had come back on, we left an electric light on. And waited a few minutes just to make sure it had steadied up.
Very good, very good.
It could have done a lot of damage otherwise.
Yes. Interesting. So, you wanted to stay with computers, did you? You thought this is...
Well, I found them interesting, and I'm still into computers because I've sort of grown along with them.
Yes. Well, how did the things progress from Leo and Hemel Hempstead? You went to another Leo or another Leo company?
An offshoot of Leo, which rapidly became known as English Electric Computers. These were rather larger machines and I'm afraid to say a lot faster, and we had a gentleman who was a programmer who was the first person ever to get music and speech out of a computer. His name was Gordon Robson. He's never had any acknowledgement at all on this, but he was a paraplegic and couldn't speak and could only use one arm. He became the chief programmer for Barclays Bank Bureau.
Remarkable. How did you meet him? Because you were working there?
He came in one day and started using the computer. I thought he was an operator. He was only one-handed, but he was a genius. I don't know what's happened to him. I can only presume because of his age he would now be not with us.
So, did you go to Barrick, or where did you go after this, Leo? The English Electric?
I got made site engineer of a lot of sites. This is how things developed. So I had about 7 sites under me, all being maintained by myself. The setup turned a bit peculiar because the company was doing all sorts of things in the way of developing along different lines. They became different named offshoots and things. That's the best way I can explain that.
Well, you showed me a couple of pieces of paper which have got headings on them. For instance, this sheet here is headed English Electric Leo Marconi.
Yes, there was a bit of a combine because they were working with each other but independent companies. Therefore the machines that were being made were in some cases entirely different, but they were using the same technical people for the ideas. So in other words, they were trying out different ideas at the same time to find out what ran best.
Yes. So you were with the English Electric element of this?
I was with the English Electric element after the break-off from Leo.
Yes. And the Marconi part, were you involved in?
Marconi were only supplying components.
Right, okay. So I'm still trying to work out how you moved from fixing the valves to becoming the chief site engineer.
Well, I can't understand that myself because I became chief site engineer of only 2 sites. That was at Min Road. That's near Park Royal. Minerva Road to be in full. But this was at the time that the company was breaking up, so it's most peculiar. But prior to this, I was site engineer for quite a few sites, and I'm afraid I was getting called out in the middle of the night, going to any of them that needed help.
These were Leo sites?
Any of the Leo,
Yes.
English Electric Leo sites.
Right.
Considering I was living in Aylesbury at the time, it was a bit of a run, but I had a nice fast car.
What was it?
At that time it was a Fairlane 500.
Really, American car?
Oh yes, I've had about 7 American cars.
Why?
Because they move. At that time I also knew the chief of police in various areas, and they got my number plate as I was covering the ticket office erased from their thing, so I didn't get any fines or anything, no matter what speed or where I parked.
Just these are police tickets. You mean parking tickets and speeding tickets?
They were erased from the computer automatically
Really?
because we supplied the computer.
Ah. English Electric.
Yes.
English Electric supplied the police.
Yeah.
And you were looking at parking and speeding tickets.
Well, they wanted the things repaired. They gave us freedom.
Yes.
The other thing was I parked in the Chief of Police's car parking space at New Scotland Yard, and he grumbled like anything at me. He said, "You can't park there, etc., etc." I said, "Well, I've come to repair the computer." He said, "Well, I don't care about that." I said, "Well, if I don't repair it, you won't get paid next week." He said, "Park there." And that was it.
What was wrong with it? Can you remember?
Oh yes, yes. Somebody had jammed up the works as usual.
Really? What sort of things?
They had a card scanner there that scanned cards at about 100 a minute, and somebody had wedged it up solid and it couldn't read the data. So they had to have it cleaned out and
Yes.
some of the cards regenerated, and then they could run the program.
Now, tell me about your move to Minerva Road. How did that come about?
They needed an engineer there.
Yeah. And they knew where you were?
Well, it was one of their sites.
Yes.
It was one of the English Electric's own sites.
Right. So you went to Minerva Road, and what did you do there?
Made the machines run better.
How?
We speeded up the clocks, we adjusted the delay lines, and also there was a lot of programming. At this time the machines ran on a wired ROM, and often we had to reprogram the ROMs by hand by feeding the wires through.
What's a ROM?
Read-only memory.
Right.
Later date, nowadays, this would either be put in a solid state device rather than hand wired.
Yes.
Some of them were even wound around nails.
What
The wires.
Yes, yes. But that was one of your activities, to put nails in and wind round them?
No, that was already one of their situations. Instead, I suggested that they use ferrite cores, which were much more efficient.
So, how did you learn about ferrite cores?
That's a good question. I'd done work on televisions, etc., and transformers use different types of materials depending on the frequency at which they're used. Ferrite cores are much more efficient at higher frequencies than iron cores because of the remnants in the magnetic substances.
So you were taking some of your television repair skills and knowledge and applying them to the computers?
Partially, sorry. Excuse me a minute.
When you say design work, when you saw the computers at Minerva Road, how were you able to speed them up or find that they might be able to work faster, for instance?
Well, mainly by speeding up the clocks. The faster the clock up to a point, the better they ran. But if you went too fast, obviously you started getting errors. The funny thing was they'd been keeping them slow, thinking that they wouldn't get the errors, and they were getting more errors running slow than they were at the right speed.
Why do you think that was?
This is to do with skews in the wiring. If you run at the wrong speed, you also get ringing on the lines, and this can cause cross-line interference from one line to another. Even now, computers are, even on motherboards and stuff, they've got sometimes one line is longer than the other to correct for skews and things like that.
Very good. So, How did the engineers who were building these computers react to your suggestions? Because presumably they've been doing it in such and such way.
Very negatively.
Really?
But
They didn't like it.
they didn't like me talking to them at all. But when they weren't there, we got it faster for them.
Is that right?
And in a lot of cases, they didn't know what we'd done, but they were saying, "Oh, look what we've done, it's running better."
So how long were you at Minerva Road, do you think?
Oh, I'm very sorry, I can't remember dates at all.
But a few years.
I should think it's about 2 years or thereabouts. But I was still covering the other sides.
Yes.
It wasn't a matter of just being there.
Right. So you get called out short notice.
Well, the way it worked was I was resident more or less at Min Road, and then called out to the other sites as and when needed. Since most of them were in London area, except for a few, like Letchworth, which was another place where there were some, didn't have too much trouble travelling. But the further afield ones were covered by different engineers, not myself, because they had Bristol, Birmingham, etc. These were what we called customer sites. They were actually being run by the customers. They'd rented them under contract, and they provided their own engineers. The way they did this, they sent them for training prior to them acting as engineers. There was a training school being run at Letchworth, by the way, for engineers.
Who was running that? Can you remember?
Can't remember, sorry, it's too long ago. I can remember a lot of stuff, but my memory's fading on this, I'm afraid.
You're doing very well so far, thank you. Right.
Technical stuff I can remember. Other stuff is a bit harder.
Yes. Did you do or make any improvements to the Leo 2 that you were working on when you went to Hemel Hempstead?
I'm afraid that's too long ago for me to remember.
Right, okay. So where did you go after Minerva Road?
Mainly doing military contracts.
Is this English
I
electric?
wasn't into computers at that time.
Ah, right, okay.
I started my own computer, sort of little company, but not as a commercial thing, doing it for friends and things, and it built up.
Can you elaborate on that? What sort of things were you doing?
Building them, getting them software in, and etc. I also did a lot of automation equipment with other companies, manufacturing on Fords and things like that. We did the test equipment for the steering and all the rest. This shook it to bits, and also British Airways Corporation, we designed a few things for them as well.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, aircraft wing testing. Again, we shook them to bits and saw what they stood up to before they crystallised.
Okay. And were you doing this as an independent, or your own company, or part of English Electric? Or?
In conjunction with the manufacturers, but mainly as an independent.
And you're still an independent?
You can call me that. I've got no responsibilities to any other company.
Yes. Is that how you like to work?
Well, I build a few things, servers, etc. And if somebody wants something, I'll see if I can do it.
But you had to move from sort of valve technology to transistors and now microchips.
The move from transit to transistors was a bit peculiar because while I was with English Electric, they more or less went over to transistors, but they also got involved with two other companies. One of them was Hyvac, who made Decatron tubes with the lights going round in them, and the other one was with another company, I can't remember the name, who made backward diodes, and these had the same sort of effect as a memory that was easy to use in theory. The only trouble is they tended to latch up, and they weren't a lot of good over a period of time.
What does latch up mean?
Latching up is instead of going backwards and forwards, they stuck in one position. That's the best I can give you without going technical.
Yes, yes. Okay. So looking back on your days at Leo, when you moved from the television into computers in the early days, late 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, is that...
I found it very interesting.
Yes, you must have done. Significant, really.
It was something new and something different. And apart from the fact that you were treated like the toy monkey because they didn't think you knew anything or could absorb it, it was quite good. But I'm afraid the so-called technicians didn't really want to divulge anything at that time, and you had to learn things by yourself, which you either scrounged information or worked it out.
Why do you think that was? It gave them some sort of particular use because they knew it and nobody else did.
They didn't want anyone else to know it. I think they wanted to be secure in their jobs. It wasn't anything personal, but it was very clicky.
Well, what was your impression when you first saw the Leo computer? Because it must have been enormous compared to what you've been working with.
Well, it wasn't enormous. It was just the fact that it was vastly different. Because I have worked with some large equipment in the past, even so. Engineering used for motor manufacturing, etc., is quite large. And since my father had a garage, I was used to big engines and things like that.
You still are?
I'm afraid so. I had to work on my van yesterday. Had a water leak.
And you have got a Cadillac, I see, in your parking outside in front of the house.
That's my son's.
You work on that? It's a big engine.
No. He had another one and the cylinder head gasket went, and it had to be scrapped. It was too costly to change. It's because you have to take the engine out and everything to get at it. Anyway, that's another thing. That's getting away from the point.
Yes. So, when you moved on and you spent really most of your career associated with electronics, and that's put you in touch or in contact with some fairly sophisticated computing equipment, anything particularly memorable stands out?
Yes.
What's that?
You're going to chuckle. Whilst working at Hartree House, which was Barclays Bank Bureau, we found that the distance between the engineers and the operators' room was a long way from the actual computer room. So having had quite a bit of thought on this, we decided to use roller skates. Now, I'm afraid I got a letter from the people owning Hartree House. You must not use roller skates going to the computer room as it leaves black marks on the floor. So I got banned from using roller skates. But the efficiency, whilst we were all using them, went up 20%.
Really?
Because they weren't wasting time.
Yes.
the time taken to get from one end of Hartree House to the other and back, walking is 20 minutes. We timed it. So just to get a box of paper for the operators, for the printer, it was taking them 20 minutes of downtime unless they'd anticipating it.
Yes. This was a Leo 2 at Hartree.
No, this was 7045.
Ah. Whose machine was that?
English Electric,
Right, right. In Hartree House.
in conjunction with RCA.
Right. I'm not sure how we got you to Hartree House. When did you go to Hartree House?
Ooh.
Or after what? We had you at...
Prior to Min Road.
Before you went to Minerva Road, you went from Hemel Hempstead to Hartree House?
Well, that was just one of the sites.
Ah. What, Hartree was?
Yes, one of the 7 sites.
I see. You weren't based at Hartree House?
No.
No. Okay. So you're working on a machine there?
Two.
2 machines?
2 machines.
Right. And this was bureau work?
Bureau work for the bank.
For the bank, okay. And any particular thoughts or stories about your time at Hartree House, apart from the roller skates? Machine was a good machine?
Never had any real trouble with them. The only machine we had bad trouble with was British Gas. That was one of our sites. That was at Wandsworth. I got severely reprimanded. I was under the floor running a cable. I came up straight under a girl's skirt.
Oh.
She didn't take very well to it.
No. Well,
She said, "How long have you been down there?"
You must have given her a jolt. Yes. You couldn't get away with that today, I don't think.
We couldn't help it. It was the only place to come out.
Of course. So is that what you had to do? Get underneath the floorboards?
The floorboards at some of the sites were about 4 foot space under them. To run the cables or run a new printer or something, you had to get under and run the cable physically. Got nice and dirty that way.
Yes. Slightly alarming, I should think.
Well, you don't want to be claustrophobic.
No, quite.
We did have one bloke jammed under the floor and we had to cut the floor open.
Really? What happened to him?
Well, they didn't cut him, they cut the floor.
Anxious moment for him, I should think.
He wouldn't go back under.
No. Where was that? Was that Hartree?
No, that was at Gas Borders again.
Ah, this was in Wandsworth.
Most of the wiring was run whenever possible under the floor because otherwise you'd be tripping over it.
Yes.
The bunches of cables were when all put together about that big.
Right. And did you have experience with the mercury delay tubes?
Mercury?
Didn't they have delay tubes? Certainly Leo 1 underneath the floors.
No, they weren't fast enough.
Yes.
The stuff we were using was glass delay lines.
Oh yeah, no, these were the early ones. I just wondered if you...
Never come across the mercury ones.
Okay.
They worked it out roughly a nanosecond per metre of wire. So you could make up your own delay lines if needed by just lengthening the wire.
Yes, very good. So, have you ever retired? Consider yourself retired?
What's retired?
The answer is no. You just keep going. And you're going to move to Wales.
I'm moving to Wales.
Any computer work in Wales?
There will be. Also, I can design anything I really want to. I've got sufficient equipment to actually produce my own chips.
Really? Really?
I did a little bit of work with AMD and they provided me with the necessary programming equipment.
Right. So you became a programmer as well?
Only for chips,
Right,
because it's programmed in Boolean algebra.
right.
That I can do.
You taught yourself
Mathematics
Boolean.
I'm not good at. But the thing is, I've never been good at maths. So being in computers, the computer does my maths for me. So that's one thing cured straight away.
Yes, perfect. All right. Well, Tony, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting chat. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to read a few words that we like to end our...
I hope you're going to edit this before you do anything with it.
Oh, yes, we'll transcribe it and then we can...
Yeah, but edit it out.
Take out the errors and
Edit out anything that you think could go.
Yes. No, I don't think we touched on it. I think we're okay.
No, but I'm asking you to.
Okay, all right, good. So,
The Leo stuff, I realise is what you're after, but it's a peculiar thing because they didn't do an actual merger and they didn't do a true change of ownership or anything. It was most peculiar the way it progressed.
how did it impact on you personally?
Well, I was happy until it became involved with ICT because soon as that happened, they wanted everybody out except their own people.
Oh, so you went?
I went. They were going to halve their wages.
Really? Goodness. So plenty went.
And ICT didn't do well.
Oh.
Now, as far as I can remember, another firm took over. Siemens. They took over ICT. And then shut the lot down.
Because the government was very keen for these computer companies, British ones, to come together to form one powerful computing entity.
It didn't.
Didn't happen, did it?
Didn't happen. So English Electric was actually at the peak. When it became ICL, it rapidly went downhill. The equipment that ICT made, like printers, scanners, etc., they were good, don't get me wrong, and they worked well with the equipment. But when they started trying to change the computers, it didn't go. And of course then IBM jumped in. And it wasn't that the IBM computers were good. They're still not really good. It's the fact that they had the money behind them. But there was another independent company over here, and they're also in America. People don't realise it was a dual country thing, and that was Cray.
Cray, oh yeah, these were massive computers, weren't they?
No, small.
Weren't they? I thought the Cray was enormous.
Small.
Super powerful, supercomputer.
You see the door there, to about here, to about the wall, that was it.
Really?
And outside,
That's about 6 foot by 2 foot 3 feet.
outside, there's about 18 tanks of liquid nitrogen
Cooling it.
to keep it cool. And the Crays were running 18,000 times faster than the fastest IBM. And the last Cray, and this is where people get muddled up, because Mrs. Cray took over when Cray died. They built one more machine, the Cray 2, and nobody's heard about it hardly. It's American military. And that is the most powerful computer in existence. The Japanese and the others have built really powerful machines, but they can't touch a Cray 2. And they're going to have to go a long way to get up to the speed of a Cray 2 because it's running superconductively. In other words, you put a signal one end, it's to the other end before you get any delay. But I did design something, and I tried to get it off the ground a while back, but they pinched my idea, and although it's not gone into production.
What's that?
A light computer. Works entirely on light internally. Not in the normal sense. And Philips have stolen it off of me.
Really?
And they can't produce it until I die.
Oh.
But anyway, the way it works is there's no clocks. And up to now, all computers have had a clock. The way it works is an instruction goes out, say like add, and then the information's fed in, and then it's going to be output. But what it does is as soon as it's finished that instruction, the next one goes, and the next one. There is no actual delay between instructions. Therefore, it runs as fast as the components will allow. It's an unclocked computer, and that is the fastest way you can do it, especially when you're using light.
So, why don't you develop it jointly with them?
16 billion pounds to develop it.
All right. Well, Tony, we'll leave it at that if we may, and I'd just like to conclude by saying that.
Now, can I ask you something?
Oh,
before you do. Oh, all right, carry on.
Just let me finish this because we have a little standard wording that we like to put at the end for the transcriber. This interview with Tony Earnshaw has been recorded by the Leo Computer Society. The Society would like to thank Tony very much for his time and reminiscences. The interview and the transcript form part of an oral history project to document the early use of electronic computers in business and other applications, but particularly in business. And any opinions expressed are those of the interviewee, that's Tony, and not of the Society. And the copyright of this interview is recorded in recorded form and in transcript remains the property of Leo Computer Society. Thank you very much.
That's fine.